Welcome to 1322. This is the way we are going to be doing class the next couple of weeks. And it's exciting in a way and makes me a little nervous in a way. And it's definitely very strange, but we're going to get through it. I want to touch upon, first of all, a few things that you guys will need to know in order to make this a successful transition from the classroom setting now to doing this online. So the first thing is attendance. Is everyone present today? Just kidding. I wish I could see you all. I wish there was a way that we could just continue to gather, but the government says we can't. So you have something in the course module, that's where you found this video, that you're going to be doing every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, some days, or over the weekend. But every time you do something, and there will be at least three things a week that you'll be doing to constitute those 3 classes a week, you're going to be posting comments or questions, or answering questions that I post, or doing a discussion, or taking a quiz, something. And that will constitute your attendance. If you don't do one of those things, if you forget about it, or if you skip it because you don't want to do it, that's going to be an absence. So that's kind of how that's going to work. If they, instruct us to do it a different way, then certainly I will do that. So the main thing is to go to the course module. You need to look at that module, study the due dates, make sure you know when things are due, look at the course calendar. That tells, like before, still when major things are due. You're going to see the changes there. There are a few changes in the syllabus, which is posted, of course, where the syllabus tab is. Just click on that. And if you keep up with all that, look at all those things each day, then you're going to be okay. You're going to know when to do stuff. You're going to know when to turn stuff in. It's all going to work out. So you don't need to worry about that too much. Okay. So for now, let's just jump right in then to talking about Erasmus. Erasmus is the next dude on our list. We've talked about Aristotle, we've talked about Plato, we've learned about Socrates in a lot of Plato's works, we've learned about Phaedrus and Gorgias, and now we are ready to talk about Erasmus. Erasmus wasn't necessarily a sophist, as were some of these other guys. He wasn't one of those that fit, distinctly into that category. He was kind of a guy that did lots of different things and kind of mastered lots of different things. He was a theologian. He was a proofreader. He was a writer. He was a speaker, more, in a religious way, but he did have a gift of speaking. One of the things that he thought was very important was to make sure that you understood copia. And up until this time, the sophists were kind of big on brevity, saying it in as few words as possible. Aristotle said, if they know it, you don't need to say it. Don't give them that information. Go on to something else. We, of course, then have the drama where Gorgias said, I'm going to speak in fewer words than any man has ever done, and I'm going to do it better than any man has ever done, and you're still going to be able to understand what I'm talking about. And he did. He demonstrated that. And that's fine sometimes. What Erasmus wants us to understand is that there's got to be a balance between brevity and copia. And so since so few people had talked about copia up until this point, he kind of goes overboard with copia. And that's almost like being superfluous, but it's really not. Copia just in itself means abundance or plenty. If you remember back when you were in grade school, your teacher around Thanksgiving time probably gave you those pictures of the wicker basket-looking horn with all the fruit and vegetables spilling out. Well, those were called cornucopia, or horns of plenty. And that's, that all has the same name. Copia, as for copia, its origins way back in the Latin. Well, Quintilian, who we haven't read yet, we're going to read about him next week, but Quintilian actually first started talking about copia. And so Erasmus got a lot of his ideas from Quintilian, and then he just kind of, took them one step further. And you see at this time, you see that copia is being used in literary works like Aesopic fables. Aesop, he had the fables where there was the ant, a lot of the animals, and the lesson at the end, the hare and the rabbit, the horse and the hare. I mean, I'm sure that you guys are familiar with that one. So copia was used in a way in different literary works, really for a couple of different reasons. One was just to show that there was a necessity sometimes to say the same thing, but say it in different ways. And then it was sometimes used just to be kind of show-offy. The author wanted to demonstrate that he had that ability, kind of like Gorgias was demonstrating his ability to be brief. But Erasmus wants he wants you to have that balance. He wants to make sure that when you use copia, and you should, it should be controlled, it should be purposeful. In other words, you need to know when to use it, and you need to know in what way to use it. It's got to have a specific reason to be stuck in your essay that way. And if it's used the right way, then you can talk about your topic and you can say the same phrase again and again and again to drive home your point, but it's not sounding repetitious because you're saying it in different ways. You're using different words that mean the same thing or similar enough that your audience is still getting the message. You need to make sure that you understand that copia is kind of twofold. So number one, you are going to be changing the words. That's the first thing that you have to do when demonstrating copia or using copia in your essays. Take something that needs to be repeated, change it up a little bit. It's almost like you're paraphrasing yourself. That actually is what it is. The other part of copia then is knowing what type of copia to use, what level of copia to go for, in what part of your paper. And so you may want to use the most eloquent type of copia when you're making your strongest point, because it's really going to be that attention grabber. Here it is, at the beginning of your paper, you're putting your strongest point forward, and you say it in such a way that your audience is really going to, oh yeah, that's interesting, let's keep going, what more do you have to say? And then at the end, when you're really trying to drive home that point, like with your clincher in your conclusive paragraph, when you're hitting up on some of those points, you may want to use some really strong language to reiterate some of your points. Use copia in that way. Most of the ways that Erasmus shows copia is with metaphor. Metaphor is just more of that broad term, kind of encompasses things like synecdoche and metonymy and all the different, inanimate to animate and animate to animate. And he gives you all these different ways that metaphor can be used. Certainly you could just kind of have that broad overriding metaphor in your copia. You don't have to always get as specific as Erasmus did. He's like I said, he's being really superfluous in letting you know that copia can happen in lots of ways, but it does need to be purposeful, and it does need to be very controlled. You don't want to just look like your paper, look like you threw up copia all over your paper. It doesn't need to be that heavy-handed. Erasmus speaks of Homer, and Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And he was one who could really use copia in such a way that it added so much to what he had to say. But then he also knew when to take away things from his writings, when he was able to, when most people might continue to add, say this in a different way, he wouldn't say it. He would leave that up to the audience. And that's kind of, using a combination of Quintilian and Aristotle. Aristotle being the one that says, if you don't need to use it, if you don't need to say it, don't do it. Let your audience come up with that on their own, and then quintillion, then who spoke more of the copia. So as you're reading through, and I want you to read it from beginning to end, as you're reading through Erasmus de Copia, I want you looking for those things. I want you looking for examples, and there at the end where he gets really repetitious with all his, putting all his copia one after another, it almost looks like you're going to be reading a little story, and then you realize, wait a minute, I'm just reading the same sentence over and over again. It's just said different ways. I want you to pay attention to the different audiences that could be more impactful for. Some of the ways he said it, are more childlike. Some of them are more flirtatious. Some of them are more technical. And so think about, how you could use that example in your own writing. And when you're writing out your essay and you get an essay back and it says, oh, repetitious, use repetitious here, repetitious, you're going to be seeing things like on your paper once you've mastered copia. So good luck with that. And make sure that you are keeping up with all those due dates. I'm sorry that we can't be together. I hope everyone's doing great. And I will catch you again soon. Bye.